Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
This week on the Kindness Project, we talk about running, the KP band, and we have part 3 of our interview with Oliver Smith from CityWire. Welcome to this week's edition of the Kindness Project. I'm joined by a man who ran a half marathon with the cold and flu. It's Chris Dames.
I am a bit fluid today, and I'm joined by a girl who put some clothes on for this podcast. It's Charlotte. How are you?
It was a really warm day today.
It was.
And I was wearing clothes, they just weren't
appropriate. You know, podcast is an audio only format, didn't you?
With video chatting, I felt it was at least appropriate to put a vest top on instead of just sitting in me bra and be comfortable.
I mean, we won't talk about the fact that Russell... actually, let's introduce producer Russ. Here's a man who has learned recently what to wear on a Zoom call. It's Russell Dames.
This is very true.
Do you want to share the story, Russ, or should we just glaze over it?
I think we'll glaze over that one.
Yeah, we will. But yeah, I did do a half marathon today. I am a bit cold and fluey. I got round. It wasn't my best time, but I did get to run around the Olympic Park, which in London, not in Tokyo. I wouldn't mind doing the Tokyo Olympic Park actually, but so
they're still actively using that one at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, managed to run around the Olympic Park. Finished at the home of West Ham London Stadium. It was all good, and the cold that I seem to have pushed off during the run has sort of come back now. So
join us.
Join us.
Yeah, we've all been sick now.
We've all got a bit cold and fluid, right? So it's all good. But what I'd like to mention is big news. Big news. Now, Russ was super excited this week, Russ, wasn't you? Russ, after a year of working Zoom, can't work mute. How you doing, Russ?
What are you excited about this week?
It's one of them days today, so yeah, I was excited, really excited to see how well our numbers are going.
So, do you want, who wants to share it? Who wants to share it?
So, we're doing really well.
Okay, I'll share it. We're doing really well. There was a specific milestone we hit that we were all quite excited about, and that's I feel like you know when you used to go to school when you were young, and the teacher used to ask you a question, you go Miss, and you're sniffing all the time. I've just.
Oh, I thought you were going to make a comment about group projects where you got the really confident one who always speaks and the people who just work on the PowerPoint.
Well, I'm normally the really confident one who speaks, but I just feel like the really confident one who speaks, who's also reverted back to being 12 and has got a little cold. So we hit 1,000 downloads a day.
Was it a day or just on one specific day?
It's on one
specific day.
But the trend is growing and growing. So thank you.
We hit that 1,000 in one day, but we've also had a milestone for the week, which is 2,500.
2,500 a week. There we go.
Nice.
So thank you to all our new listeners who are sticking with us. Hopefully you're enjoying the podcast. We appreciate your support, and if you were part of the 1,000 who downloaded on Wednesday, let us know. We'd like to just say thanks personally. So you can get in touch with us in the following methods. Oh, you as well?
Leave off, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch with us on Twitter, it's @OlaKindness. If you want to get in touch on Facebook, you just type the Kindness Project into the search bar and it should come up. If you type the Kindness Project into Google, it should be the first thing that comes up. But if not, the website is www.kindnessproject.co.uk. If you want to email us, it's ola@thekindnessproject.co.uk. And unfortunately, we don't really use anything else.
No, and if you'd like to be coughed and spluttered at and sniffed at, just listen to this episode again. turn up around our house, and we'll happily do that for you. We will give you. I mean, I don't want to cough in your face with like a global pandemic going on, but I will give you a personalised sniff. Is that a thing, Russ? Huh?
What's your address? I mean,
we're not sharing the address on the podcast. That's a step too far. Right.
I mean, they could just Google us. Probably online somewhere.
Sorry, are you trying to incentivize people to Google our address so they can turn up around our house?
Well, I was trying to incentivize people to Google us specifically, not.
Well, Google the Kindness Project. Google Russell Dames. Put it with a search term, teeth. I don't know why, because he's got amazing teeth when he puts them in. Toothless. If you're Googling Charlotte, what terms should they use to find you the most?
Funky
Charlotte Dames. Russ, this is like a band name. Funky Charlotte Dames. Russ the Teeth Dames. Go on in, chaps. What's my nickname?
You know, if you Google my name, your pictures come up.
I know. I'm all over the internet. What's my nickname?
Just Chris.
Just Chris. I'm taking that. I like that.
It's what you saying, Russ? The ball patch Dames.
The ball
patch. Well, you can always go with what me and Soph call you sometimes.
What's that?
Evil King Christoph.
Well, there's two nicknames I've got. I've got Evil King Christoph the Third after I did that weird impression to make you two laugh, and Papa Smurf.
Yeah.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like a 70s style psychedelic band.
I definitely think you should go for that. Run a marathon all in blue.
What, a Smurf?
With a white boiler.
Yeah, I'm glad you went for blue and not a darker colour, Russ, because that's not allowed anymore, all right? We are not going down that road. But can I, before we move on, and I think we should swiftly move on before we get ourselves into too much trouble, Charlotte. Can I make a recommendation? Ladies and gents, if you've got Disney Plus, there is an amazing documentary on Disney Plus at the minute called The Summer of Soul. The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, about the Harlem Cultural Festival that happened in 1969 and had just these amazing lineup of bands play free in this park in Harlem. Give it a watch. I think you can get it on Amazon, but it's available on Disney Plus if you've got a subscription. We are not sponsored by Disney Plus.
We're not sponsored.
We're not sponsored full stop, but at 1,000 downloads a time, we might find a sponsor that might want to do it soon. Not that we're worried. And we will, definitely give that a watch, because it is an amazing insight into a period that I don't remember particularly, but and you forget how much amazing music came out in the late 60s, early 70s. It was just incredible. Russ, what's your TV tip of the week? This is new, isn't it?
What's the
TV tip of the week? Can you do jingle for that?
I'm not sure about TV because I don't watch much TV.
Okay.
I mean, any piece of media that you've been consuming will do. Book, podcast.
Oddly enough, I've got all the media. I've got Disney Plus. I've got Netflix. Never use them.
What's the point of paying for them then?
They come with my Sky package.
What, have you got a Sky package?
Yeah.
Why have you got a Sky package if you don't watch much TV?
I've got Sky.
Right.
And the main channels I watch are terrestrial channels.
Bennett, get Freeview.
Oh, that's do you watch Food Network? I love Food Network.
What's your favourite show on Food Network?
I watch Barefoot Contessa on there sometimes.
Oh.
The Barefoot Contessa's not bad.
That's the name of our band. The bear. Right, hold on. How about this? Right, Funky Charlotte Dames, Russ the Teeth Dames, and Papa Smurf are the barefoot contessors. What do we reckon?
I think
Or the Barefoot Contessa fan club. What do we reckon?
Yeah.
We having that?
Or we could just go with TKP and hope for the best.
TKP?
What's our first song going to be, though?
Sorry?
What's our first song going to be?
We're just writing songs about food.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm mainly going to
I
write...
had a great spag bowl last night.
McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and a Pizza Hut.
No. I'm just gonna write one about cheese. Cheese.
Put some cheese with my toast in the toaster. Didn't go over well.
Found out I was lactose after that meal.
Are you two? Are you two all right? Right. This is the latest game. I love this. I'm going to name a Russ. You're first, right? I'm going to name. I don't know why I've picked scissors up, and I'm pointing them at you, but I'm going to name an ingredient or a food.
Yeah.
You've got to make a song out of it. You ready?
Yeah.
I was going to say milkshake, but there's already one. There's already one about that.
Garlic.
No, I pick the thing. Wait. Banana.
Banana. I think I'm getting a little banana.
Perfect. Right, your turn. You ready? You ready? Charlotte's turn. We are going to pick the word and the thing. What can I see in the kitchen? Mint tea.
I made some nice mint tea. Yes. Well, Mum thought it was fancy.
Sorry, are you starting the song? Is it like?
Yeah. My song is going to start with a little monologue, and then
a little monologue talking about. I made some mint tea the other. It's like part life.
Yeah.
I made some mint tea. Right, start your song.
You got to make it strong, steep it long, make some mint tea.
Steep it. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
We
what
could write eggs on this.
Teal, we are missing a trick. We are missing a trick. Go on in. My last one to top it
I
off.
want you to do garlic.
Unless you're a vampire, garlic's rather fun. But put it in your food. Don't stick it up. You know, right. I'm really sorry. This has got too silly now. Let's crack on with the show. Now, Kindness News is back. You do know that, because can I just say a massive thank you? I know she's not in the room. A massive thank you to Kelly. Let's talk about Kindness News.
Kindness News.
Oh, sorry, you're done. Kindness News, I love garlic. Youth is fighting microplastic pollution with magnetic liquid after winning Google Science Fair. A young Irishman has come up with his own cool sciencey method to solve the microplastic pollution conundrum, winning Google's International Science Fair in the process.
By mixing magnetized iron oxide and vegetable oil. Vegetable oil. He created a kind of liquid magnet that collects microplastics, which can then be removed via magnetism, leaving only glistening water behind.
There's nothing like growing up in a pristine environment to galvanise a person to its defence. And a feature on young Fion Ferreira from the south of Ireland details how, since the age of 12, he's been looking to find a solution for their hard-to-clean microplastics he knew accompanied the growing amount of plastic garbage that tended to wash up on the beaches he frequented during childhood.
I was at our beach and I saw a rock and it had oil spill residue on it. And stuck this oil spill residue was plastic particles, says Fion in a video presentation for the Plastic Soup Foundation.
I asked myself why this is happening, and I found out that plastic particles are what we call non-polar, and oil is non-polar too. In chemistry, like attracts likes, which means non-polar things attract non-polar things.
He heard
something called ferrofluid.
Just scroll right past the bit I'm reading, won't you? He heard of something called ferrofluid, which was a kind of magnetic water made by combining vegetable oil with magnetized iron oxide powder. In the same video presentation, he shows that oil attracts the microplastics and the immersion of a magnet sucks up the lot.
I started out as a lonely inventor forever, told BBC. After the Google Science Fair, I could all of a sudden speak to scientists and they gave me loads of credit for what I've done. My idea was no longer a toy invented for a child and is now being practically used to get rid of microplastics in the sea, which is super, super important. And number 2 is rescuers find lost dog, Ollie. Actually quite personal because we've got Ollie Smith on the podcast again this week.
Oh, do we? Nice.
After swim off Portugal.
This is the moment an RNLI crew rescued a Springer Spaniel dog who went missing after going swimming in the sea. Ollie disappeared for 3 hours, sparking a rescue operation near Porthcawl, Bridgeon County. The dog went for a paddle at Newton Point but failed to return to shore, instead to continue to swim out to sea, said its rescuers. He was eventually spotted 3 miles away at the base of a cliff at Southerndown, Vale of Glamorgan, on Saturday just after 11:30 British Standard Time. We were delighted to find Ollie safe and well, having been spotted and assisted by a kayaker who had been in the area, said Simon M, Porthcawl RNLI. He seemed very happy to see us and enjoyed his ride on the lifeboat.
Now, I'm wondering whether Ollie's out for a swim, his boat rides up and drags him out the water. We go, what are you doing? I'm still having a swim.
Well, it was gone for quite a while.
Yeah, I don't know how long the ideal swim for a dog is. Maybe
Not that long.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's like Newfoundland.
Right. And what I've just realised, even though we've moved on to kindness news, because of our state of cold and flu, we haven't done the question of the podcast this week, have we, Russ? Producer Russ didn't remind us about QOTP.
No.
No. So the question of the podcast this week is, who's your favourite Cluedo character? Wrong answers only. Why are you laughing?
Just remembered last week.
What happened last week?
Last week we recorded for this. We were given answers for this question. Oh, it's funny.
Yeah. Cluedo characters, wrong answers only is what we want. So who do you think should be highlighted as a character they should include in Cluedo, but don't yet? And what was your answer, Russ? Can you remember from last week? I mean, listeners can go and check, but
it was the hooker in the library.
The hooker in the library. Never played a game of Cluedo in his life. Doesn't realise its title and then colour. So he comes up with the prostitute in the library.
Woman of the night.
Just out of
amongst
interest.
The shelves.
Just out of interest, what's she reading?
Was that what?
What's she reading in the library?
I don't know.
Okay.
50 Shades of Grey.
Right. Okay. Wrong answers only on that, and we'll look forward to reading them out next week.
That isn't included. The dead body.
Yeah, no. The dead body has got a name. I can't remember what the name is. The dead body is a.
It ain't Jade Doe, is it?
No, it's. I'm pretty sure, and again, if any of our listeners know, they can let us know. But I'm pretty sure it's Mr. Something.
Yeah, it's the owner of the mansion.
Yeah, but he's got a colour-related name.
Oh no, because black.
Don't know. No. It might be black. Okay.
Well, like, you don't get a little piece to put his dead body.
No, and you wouldn't be moving about that much anyway, would you? Anyway, let us know, and let's get on with the show. So we had such an amazing chat with Ollie, Russ, didn't we? That normally our interviews only stretch over 2 weeks, but because of the conversation we had with Ollie, which was, we entered into quite a lot of interesting topics. We explored a lot of facets of mental health. Ollie's interview actually went over. Is it going to be 3 weeks, Raz, or 4 weeks?
3. This
3
is
weeks.
the last part.
So
I just had to double check. That
so this week,
the next one there.
this week is the final week of Ollie's interview. Russ believes, I think, Russ, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is probably one of the most insightful interviews we've ever done.
Yeah, I think
really open and honest conversation about mental health.
I think this is the most meaningful interview we've ever
for
done.
you. Yeah. But I really hope, listener, that you benefit from Ollie's insights, what he's gone through, his experience. If you haven't heard parts 1 and 2 of this, I'd really encourage you to check out the last couple of episodes and listen back before you listen to this one. But let's hear from Ollie. But then this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Are we, failure and success? Who's defining that apart from us? It's in the perspective of success being I need to be in, every day, otherwise I'm a failure, is an interesting debate to have, isn't it? Because surely happiness, well-being and positive mental health, I'd argue, are probably more important. None of these things sit in isolation, and we all need to look after our families and make sure that we're financially secure and all of that sort of good stuff. But is success the wealthiest bloke in the graveyard, or is it somebody who has got the balance a bit more appropriate and actually is a bit more open and honest about their mental health? I don't know.
I think it's an excellent point to raise. I don't know what success is. I mean, I think I'm still on that journey. I couldn't sit here honestly and say, oh, this is what success looks like to me. I mean, I think I could say that I'm quite desperate at the moment to be happy, whatever that means, and to probably feel a bit of a lighter burden there. And, I think there'll be moments where achieving that for some significant amount of time involves a lot of hard work. It does involve hard work. There'll be times where it means sticking a boundary down and saying, I'm not going to do that because right now I'm listening to myself and what my body and my mind needs. And that's the point about self-awareness, is that there won't be a catch-all solution for every situation. But if you're self-aware enough to understand what you need, where you should be pushing and where you should be giving ground for yourself, for other people, that's that's a much more effective toolkit than, I suppose, feeling buffeted by external pressures for success. As you say, like, I've got to have the nicer car because people won't respect me. And
then I suppose that leads on to a question that's actually on my list. It's 2 questions that are on my. Ollie, we had to get back to the list at some point, didn't we?
Okay. What list, Chris?
We've been ignoring the list for about 40 minutes, but let's get back to it now, mate. But I suppose I was going to do it seamlessly, Ollie, but I thought let's just mention the list again. I suppose one of the things is that perception of success in financial services, and for blokes in particular. Do you think that there's unique challenges for people who work in, our field across a range of different jobs, or for blokes?
I mean, I think the two are sort of inextricably connected, aren't they? Because to this day, financial services remains an industry populated largely by men. I mean, clearly there's some progress there, not enough, but to the extent that it is still a very male industry, I think it's going to have a disproportionate, challenge on its hands. I mean, if I'm to have the Chris Dames optimism hat on there, you can spin that and say, okay, we've got tons of men here. We need to make leaders out of them and to promote that conversation. And I think there's one thing that's very visible in, male mental health behavior, is that fear of judgment and fear of judgment by other men. And if you can knock that down using other men, that's potentially a very, very healthy thing to do. I think at the more severe end of things, I do believe that, among the primary victims of male mental health is not just men, it's women. if England get beaten, so does she. That's not a financial services point, but in the sense that financial services is dominated by men, and to the extent that, I'm quite firmly of the belief that in the sort of historical sense, men have lost an empire and not quite found a role yet, and they're still having, as a species, they're having that inward negotiation about what their purpose is in society, and that's really, really tough, particularly in the context that you mentioned at the start, this sort of geographical comparison between the UK and, say, Scandinavian countries. I mean, Scandinavia has a very long and famous history of, colonial exploits and pillaging other countries. But, it was over, really, by the 20th century. And that's not something you can say of Britain. So I think there's in terms of the history here, and in terms of how history informs culture and understanding, that is one thing that sets the UK completely apart.
Okay.
And it's something that has really, really been a force for kind of cultural reckoning in the last 2 years. It doesn't even need saying, this absolute tension over who controls the narrative of the past and what the purpose of the nation is. Is patriotism okay? Blah, 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 blah. These are all questions, I think, internalized within male mental health, because they're ultimately about control and they're ultimately about resources. And in a context where men are giving up control in the workplace, they're giving a voice to women, they're giving up control in their own lives because they're looking after their kids more. They're being more present as fathers. They're playing a much more holistic role in other people's lives as well. That's a very, very difficult transition, I think. And I probably covered a lot there in a very reductivist and quite rambling way, but that's just a sense of how I understand these things to mesh together. And I don't think there are any coincidences there, really. I think there's a much bigger story there about men and history and transition and change and purpose that makes male mental health a really, really significant challenge right now. And to the extent that, as I've said, men dominate financial services, is always going to be a huge part of life in financial services.
Gotcha. I mean, I suppose an interesting thing for me is comparing how Cassie, my wife, communicates with her friends about topics like this, whereas for me it would be less of a natural thing to do. So Cassie is always communicating socially. I do that. It's an interesting one, Ollie. I probably over the last couple of years, and this is for me been sort of brought forward by the pandemic. I think I've realised that I wasn't spending enough time with friends that didn't involve work.
Okay.
And there was a really interesting article in the papers probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was all about this guy who, seemingly successful in his mid-50s, who turned around and said, "I've got no friends." And I think that's a brave admission to make. And he turned around and said, everything I do, because I'm focused so much on work, I have, I'm mates with people at work, I'm free, but I've got no friends outside of what I do for a living. And I suppose my, informal observation, I don't know if there's any relevance to this at this point or not. I think actually women are just far better maintaining those social bonds and making connections, and being more open and honest about some of the challenges they face. Because I think as men, again, we're trained through what we see and some of those sort of perceptions about to say that it's all right, I'll just crack on and there's no issue. Now, the interesting thing is, I was conscious about this in my own life, and started making a bit more of an effort probably sort of 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, to just spend more time with people I liked, and it wasn't work related. So I had that sort of separate identity. And I've been talking about the issue with like sort of blokes who similar age to me, similar situation, and I said, look, sometimes you get to a point where you go, if I didn't have work, I wouldn't have any social connection. And every single one of them said, I think I'm a bit the same. And it's interesting, isn't it? That perception of friendship for women and that, work first for men is something we need to get over, I think, for our own well-being.
I did some mental health first aid training at the beginning of 2020 and before the lockdowns, and one of the key things you learn in there is about boundaries and and about what to do when someone comes to you and discloses something really difficult, because you can't necessarily take everything on yourself. It's not wise to shoulder that burden entirely. So one of the kind of key questions here is, if someone comes to you and says, look, I'm having an absolutely awful time here, it's who knows about this? And I think often the answer to that question is, oh, well, spoken to Dave in the kitchen at work or whatever, I've had a chat with HR. It's like, no. Who in your life outside of that setting knows about this? Have you told your mum? Have you told your dad? Have you told your brother? And so often the answer is no. And, that's certainly been a thing in my life where I've been afraid to tell people, that are my blood relatives about the truth of what's going on in my life. But I think that brings me to another point that I found really, really beneficial on mental health and speaks to your point about, coping strategies. For me, mental health is simply and utterly about the truth. It's about the truth. It's about telling the truth. It's about being courageous with the truth, and it's about making sure that other people know the truth. And if that means that you're in this situation where actually, as I was, I had tons of friends, dozens of friends, because I'm a very, very sociable person. Not that many of them really knew the truth. They didn't know that. They didn't know that I was getting out of bed and I hate myself, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. The people in my family, they didn't know the truth about what was going on. And there's always...
Was that a bit of a mask, Ollie? Was that something you felt you needed to do?
Absolutely. And it's all to do with, that success and failure dynamic. My family, for context, everyone in my family went to Oxbridge, pretty much. And that's not something I really realised was tough until after the fact, until after I went as well. It's like, that's a really, really tough expectation on your shoulders. And
see, this is the interesting thing, Ollie. When you come from a family like mine, low expectations set you free. You can't go wrong, really.
Well, I totally agree. And I suppose on a serious level, would I recommend a high-pressured, unfeeling academic institution like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
Because I would rather them grow up in an environment and a framework where they were comfortable with their truth.
Look, I think it all comes down to, I mean, as you know, I've got a daughter who's going to university next year, and it's fascinating. So she's academic. She's, I encourage her to learn, and as you know, sort of, in terms of running a financial planning business, I do plenty of exams and stay, and sort of encourage learning. But we were having a conversation the other day about getting the balance right between academia and happiness, and making sure that she understands that yes, a good education provides good opportunities, but I care about actually her enjoying the journey. Do you think that sometimes that pressure stops that enjoyment?
I absolutely do. And in fact, I'm not treating this as a therapy session, Chris, but I'll send you a check anyway, because, having heard you just say that, it's abundantly clear to me now in this moment, that it's not a coincidence that since I left university, I haven't done any exams. There are people in my peer group who went on to do masters. My brother did PhD. You go on to professional exams, perhaps, if you become a financial advisor, as you say, or you go into a really high end graduate career like accountancy or consultancy. You might do your accountancy exams, or you might become a chartered financial analyst or whatever it is. I haven't done any of that, and it's no coincidence that at this point in my life, age 28, nearly 29, I'm only just starting to reconfront this idea of academic growth, because I lost out so much from people as a result of being so academically oriented. And one of the real challenges in the last 10 years has been balancing up, people and work. And it's been brilliant for me to work for a company where people and work are the same thing. But that's not the end, it's not the end. It's not the end solution. And as I was just said, there have been plenty of moments where I've thought, hang on, the only people that know about this, who are my friends, are people from work. And actually, I should probably talk to someone outside of that setting who's going to challenge me on this issue.
We are privileged in that regard, aren't we? We do. I mean, so the profession we're in is a social one, which is great. If you're like us and like people and want to be out there. But I think, taking some of those conversations outside. I mean, certainly I'm grateful that Cassie is, we've got really open, honest and sort of relationship. And I think running the podcast with Charlotte has helped me certainly have some ridiculous conversations on this podcast, if I'm frank, Ollie, but also some quite insightful ones.
I'll provide the former.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty good at the former. The latter ones I struggle with, but I'll try and get the balance right a little bit. So, I mean, I think one of the underlying threads of our conversation is we need to do more as a society, and actually potentially. Make sure that we're making fundamental underlying change so that we can help more people. I'm giving you a magic wand. You can make one change, set one law, have, your budget's unlimited. You can do whatever you want. What are you changing to make sure that we can tackle some of those societal challenges in a bit more of a meaningful way?
Well, I mean, to go from the insightful to the ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous because this is boring, and I don't want to be boring on your podcast, but I need money, Chris. This is a boring answer. I need 50 billion quid. Okay. I need 50 billion quid to revamp early years education and early years care of vulnerable children and vulnerable families, single parent families, because it all starts at that point. Yeah. And the more you intervene, I've seen this myself, volunteering in the local school, the more you intervene early on and get it right, the more you save both the individual, but also, I suppose, just from a purely taxpayer focused interest, the more you save the state, and that's what I mean by saying I want money, because I suppose if I were to make this a non-financial argument, I would wave my wand and I would change the way people thought about this. And I would say, okay, stop looking at mental health as a cost and as the inconvenience of, for be it companies or departments within government or even, right at the top at number 10, stop looking at it as a burden on the bottom line. Because actually, I think when you spend that money early on and you do it right and you set up those dedicated mental health centres where people can, people from all walks of life and people with really, really troubling stories can get a bit of help, you're investing in people. Yeah. You're investing in people's futures. You're giving people the benefit of the doubt, and you're sending them the message. And this is a really, really key thing that, I've benefited from, that they don't have to get it right first time.
Yeah.
And we live in a country where people with drug addiction or people with really, really serious psychosis or, incredibly challenging mental health problems, and they are mental health problems. They're treated like criminals and weirdos, and, they're not on their trajectories. Then they're not going to get better or feel better first time around. It'll take
Yeah.
significant and repeated interventions to get even a pragmatic outcome. But if you approach it as an investment and as a sacrifice, almost as a kind sacrifice in them, expecting nothing in return, you'll be surprised at how much people give back. And that's certainly been the case in my life, where at my most despondent, I've realized, just how many people are batting for me and how kind people have been to me, and how I don't just owe it to them, I owe it to myself, to carry on their example and to do it for other people. And I think so. Yeah, if I were to wave my magic wand, there'd be 50 billion dropping out of the magic money tree for the actual infrastructure. But it would be that change in mindset, where people feel like they can be kind, and that is something that will pay off. It's not just something that will inconvenience them in the short term, and that's just gone down the drain. That everyone will benefit. Giving up your time, giving up your ears, giving up a little bit of money, that could benefit not just you, but just everyone else.
I mean,
what you're doing for everyone else.
Society, doesn't it? Yeah, I think I suppose that alludes to another sort of point. So if you look at the way we educate our kids nowadays, it's still a Victorian education system for a modern age, isn't it? I wonder whether some of these elements of do we teach our kids tools to impact positive mental health, skills that might be practically applicable to live a happier life with greater well-being at the sacrifice potentially of some of those more academic skills. I think that might be a debate that's worth having, but I think the challenge you've got is the financial implications of doing that, but also the huge cultural shift it takes to get from where we are now to where we should get to. But yeah, I'll speak to Russ and see if he can wave our magic money tree. Do you reckon we can find 50 billion for Ollie, Russ, or what?
I don't think we can.
If there's one thing I appreciate, it's realism.
Yeah. Well, we like to go from the deep to the completely ridiculous. If Russ, check down the back of the sofa, see if you can find that cash for Ollie.
I think that's absurd, mate.
That's right.
I might find a penny or two, but I don't think we've got 50 billion down the back of the sofa.
Are you going to come and say hello? You're desperate to say hello to Ollie, aren't you?
Hello, how are you doing?
For you, Ollie.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
All right. So I'm halfway through an interview. She's off again. Right. So we have come to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for an incredibly insightful conversation. I've loved it. Help me understand, if people want to find out about sort of the work that you do to promote those mental health conversations, where can they find it?
If they're in a particularly sassy mood, find me on Twitter at 93_Smithereens. I can't guarantee it will just be about mental health. There may be some other personal opinions in there as well. If they're not feeling sassy and they want something that's genuinely professionally insightful, you'll always find articles here and there on the New Model Advisor website. So go to citywire.co.uk/New Model Advisor. Just Google it.
Google it. Just Google it. Amazing. Thank you, mate. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks so much. It's been really, really fun. I really appreciate it, Chris.
And that's the last part of Ollie. I just want to say a personal thanks to the legend that is Ollie Smith for coming on and talking to us about that. I really appreciate that. And then let's move on with the show.
Tis the end of another podcast, but the end is never really the end because the end is always bigger.
And there is, and we're filming this in our lounge, and I think my wife Cassie has forgot her keys because she's banging on the window, and I don't know whether she forgot her keys or she just wants to interrupt and get involved in the podcast. I ain't got a clue, Russ. What do you think?
I think that's the second meeting they've disturbed with that.
Yeah, true. Okay, so the last week's question, and apologies again for all the coughing and spluttering. Last week's question of the podcast was, what's your favourite pun? And I'm going to let Charlotte answer these.
Okay, John Cook said, why do Marks only drink herbal tea? Because all property is theft.
Hold on, wait for the laugh. All property is theft. Karl Marx, right? Yeah? Communist joke. Right, let's try the other one. Right, this is the mission.
Get Russell to laugh.
Without the mission is you've got to get Russell to laugh. This is Mike Christie's attempt.
So I fancied a game of darts with my mate. He said, nearest the ball goes first. He went, bah, and I went, boo. He said, you're the closest.
That was a breathless chuckle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a breathless.
I don't get a sneeze. I don't know if it was a laugh or a sneeze.
Was it a laugh or a sneeze, right?
It was a giggle.
A giggle? Oh,
yeah.
We can't do the giggle. Let's see if we do...
Johnny Piper said, I have a pet amphibian. His name is Tiny because he's minute.
He's minute, Russ. Really small. Oh no, he likes that one. He likes that
I
one.
don't like that one.
Minute, right. And let's go for... So the winner of the Making Russell Laugh competition so far is winning. Johnny Piper's winning. If Gavin Agar's one gets a gavor, then he's won. But if it doesn't, I think Johnny Piper's the winner.
What's the difference between a buffalo and a bison? You can't wash your hands in a buffalo.
No, I don't.
Tommy, was that a bit of tumbleweed that just went past us?
That was a bit of tumbleweed.
I mean, he did at the end of his comment just put boom boom, and I don't think you should have that if it's actually funny.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
Right. So.
Oh, basin.
So, on that. Oh, bison. I think, I mean, what's weird is the pun didn't work, but Charlotte turning around and going, oh, bison, was really funny.
In a best carry on voice.
Yeah, it was. Oh, bison. Oh, bison. Anyway, on that note, oh, bison. On that note, that's the end.
Right, so 'tis the end. Let's go for here's another chance to mock me.
Oh, bison. That is the end. Charlotte's ended it. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of TKP. With
Projects.
Bullman Chris, Russ of the Teeth Dames, and Funky Charlotte. Speak to you later.